ladies and gentlemen, Salem the cat.
Tonight, Sabrina and I are taking you traveling through time as we visit every show on TGIF and send them back into the past. Yeah! But first, let's find out what TGIF stands for this week. Time goes insane Friday. This is the way time usually travels. It makes sense. This is the way time travels on Insane Friday. It's out of control. Just moments from now, Sabrina is going back to the 60s.
If you grew up in the 90s, you remember TGIF. Friday nights weren't about going out. They were about staying in. Pizza on the couch, friends or family piled around the TV, and 2 straight hours of comfort comedy on ABC. Full House, Family Matters, Step by Step, Boy Meets World, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. These weren't just shows, these were a part of growing up. However, by 1997, the magic was starting to fade. Family Matters and Step by Step had left for CBS, and ABC needed to do something big to fill that gap. So, they doubled down on the supernatural. Sabrina was a hit, and suddenly TGIF was filled with fantasy. A witch, a genie, and a teenage ghost. It was the strangest lineup that ABC had ever seen. And somehow, it worked, or at least for a short time it did. Then came the big idea. A one-night-only crossover called the TGIF Time Warp. On November 7th of 1997, Sabrina's talking cat, Salem, swallowed a magical time ball and accidentally sent the entire TGIF lineup spinning through time. One show would end up in the 1960s, another in the 40s, another in the 50s, and one last show in the disco-fueled 70s. ABC promoted this crossover like a mini-movie. 4 shows, 4 decades, 1 cat. So, for one very surreal Friday night, the TGIF universe collided. Sabrina, Boy Meets World, You Wish, and Teen Angel all shared the same storyline, connected by one wisecracking cat and a whole lot of nostalgia. It was weird, it was pretty wonderful too, and it was totally TGIF. So, today we're going to go back to that night in 1997. To relive some of those glory days and remember what made that magical crossover so damn cool. If you loved TGIF as much as we did, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already for more retro TV deep dives. Tonight, we're taking a trip back in time. Come on, let's get to it. Part 1, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Inagata Sabrina.
I'll find some self-respect.
Sabrina Spellman, everyone's favorite teenage witch, kicks off our Time Warp adventure crossover. In Inagata Sabrina, the Season 2 episode that opens the crossover, Sabrina faces a new magic test from her quizmaster. She is tasked with brewing a concoction from an old spell book. Always being one to spice things up, she decides to brew a time ball. Essentially, a magic sphere that can transport its user to another time. With typical 16-year-old curiosity, she wants to visit the 1960s and experience that groovy era of peace, love, and tie-dye firsthand. Everything goes fine until Sabrina briefly steps away, and Salem, drawn by the time ball's irresistible sardine-like smell, gulps down the magic ball right off of her desk. Classic Salem. And then this hairball of time travel energy immediately sends Sabrina's entire world spinning back about 30 years. Suddenly, it's the late 1960s in the Spellman household. The furniture transforms into groovy mid-century decor, everyone's clothes and lingo revert to hippie-era style, and peace signs are abound. Sabrina initially is delighted. She embraces the psychedelic vibe with open arms. Of course, the 60s aren't all free love and daisies. The episode has some fun and pointed culture shock moments. Her high school class gets in a circle and sings Kumbaya in Mr. Kraft's class, who also happens to be a hippie. Sabrina also soon realizes that any women's liberation movements haven't happened yet, and being a girl in the 1960s comes with some seriously outdated expectations. This being a sitcom, of course, Sabrina tries to set things right in her own magical way, but as long as her cat Salem literally has time on his side, i.e. in his stomach, the 90s just aren't coming back. And Salem, enjoying the chaos, refuses to cough up the time ball and scampers off on the run. The episode builds up to a frantic chase. Sabrina must track down her troublemaking cat through the tie-dyed streets of 1960s suburbia before he does any more damage to history. In the original airings ending, Salem actually sneaks out the front door and then hops a ride to Philadelphia on the back of a Volkswagen van, no less, which then slyly sets up the next show in the lineup. In fact, 2 different endings for this episode were filmed. For the crossover night, it ends on a cliffhanger with Salem escaping, but in syndicated reruns, they later added an alternate ending where Salem just uses the litter box off screen to get the time ball out of his system, instantly restoring the status quo. Yep, the non-crossover version handwaves the entire adventure by implying that Salem quite literally passed the problem. Arguably an even more ridiculous ending. As the TGIF Time Warp originally aired, we follow Salem's trail out of Sabrina's world and into the next show. So, cue the Boy Meets World theme as we leap from the summer of love straight into the wartime 1940s. Part 2. Boy Meets World in No Guts, No Corey.
But then his number came up and he was gone at the draft. He's in the army now, blowing reveille. He's the boogie woogie.
Operator. Yes, connect me with Mr. Panga Lawrence at Zenith 65000. No answer, huh? Golly. You can drive from Philly to Cleveland in a week, but they don't have a machine that can take a message.
Oh, don't worry, Corey. That dame loves you up to the sky and back. She wouldn't let you ship out without saying goodbye.
Yeah, well, I ain't just saying goodbye.
Don't say ain't, you mother will faint.
So next up in the TGIF Time Warp, Salem's magic sends us from Sabrina's groovy 1960s to suburban Philadelphia in 1941. Suddenly, the Boy Meets World gang finds themselves living through World War II in an episode titled No Guts, No Corey. It's one of the strangest detours the series ever takes. Equal parts history lesson, romance, and total sitcom fever dream. This whole thing starts when Salem stumbles into John Adams High School. One minute, Corey's worrying about homework and Topanga, and then the next minute, he's in uniform with the draft notice in his hand. News of Pearl Harbor breaks, and then Corey, Sean, Jack, and even Corey's dad, Alan, all decide to enlist. And then there's Eric. Poor Eric tries to enlist too, only to get rejected for being quote-unquote too ticklish. Which, in classic Boy Meets World logic, somehow makes sense. Deemed unfit for service, he stays home to protect the Liberty Bell, proudly announcing his mission like it's top-level government work. It's Eric at his lovable doofus best, grounding the story with a little slapstick in the middle of all the khaki. Before shipping out for deployment, Corey gets cold feet about leaving without telling Topanga how he really feels. In the candlelight of a 1940s dance hall, he kneels down and proposes with all the sincerity of a soldier in a movie reel. Topanga says yes, and for the moment, the episode plays it straight. Soft focus, romantic swing music, and even a teary goodbye. It's cheesy, but in the best possible TGIF way. Then the boys head overseas, and the show turns into a full-blown war movie parody. They're in trenches, passing time with harmonicas and letters from home. Sean cracks wise, Jack tries to act tough, and Corey just daydreams about Topanga. When a radio broadcast announces an approaching ceasefire, Corey, being ever so impulsive, pops up from the trench shouting that it's over. Cue an explosion, some smoke, and a pair of dog tags landing in Sean's hand. Suddenly, everybody believes Corey is gone. Another casualty of sitcom misunderstanding. Meanwhile, back home, things are just getting weirder. Topanga and Sean, being devastated, try to honor Corey's last wish, that Sean marry Topanga if anything were to happen to Corey. Yeah, you heard that right. The best friend and the fiancé start planning a wedding. It's awkward, it's ridiculous, and it's exactly the kind of far-fetched twist that the audience kind of expected at this point. Meanwhile, Amy Matthews just refuses to believe her son is dead, and also in classic sitcom mom fashion, she sends Eric to Europe to find him. Because, of course, the US Army can't, but Eric totally can. Across the Atlantic, Corey is alive. He's living in Paris with a serious case of soap opera amnesia. He's traded his helmet for a beret, he speaks French with a terrible accent, and he calls himself a poet. And he's even fallen in love with a French girl named Versailles, because subtlety was never this show's strong suit. So when Eric and Jack finally track him down, Corey of course doesn't recognize him, so they just roll with it and become a part of his new life in Paris. By the time Topanga and Amy burst into the cafe, Corey's mid-wedding to his new fiancée. Topanga's plea for him to remember her leads to the most predictably adorable resolution imaginable: the magic of true love's kiss. One smooch later, the beret's gone, the accent's gone, and Corey is back. Topanga? He gasps. Aside from Salem's quick cameo, he's been slinking through the Matthews house early on, smug as ever. The Sabrina crew never shows up. The Magic Cat is basically a spark plug that throws Boy Meets World into its own mini-movie, and then vanishes to cause trouble somewhere else. So taken by itself, this episode plays like a contained what-if scenario type of story. One that longtime fans are still talking about today. And it is a weird one. Watching it years later, without the rest of the TGIF Time Warp around it, you'd swear you accidentally changed the channel to a History Channel spoof. It's melodramatic, it's occasionally nonsensical, and it's very charming at the same time. One reviewer once called it a monstrosity, not even the good kind of bad, which is a little bit harsh, but you kind of get it. Without context, it's pure chaos. With context, it's a fascinating relic of a night when 4 sitcoms shared one magic cat and a single plot line. Still, for anybody that did grow up watching it live, No Guts, No Corey was unforgettable. Seeing Corey, Sean, and Topanga in 40s clothes spouting old-timey slang was worth the price of admission alone. The cast clearly leaned into the absurdity. Sean delivering war movie one-liners, Eric acting like a wannabe spy, and Corey playing hero with wide-eyed sincerity. It was Boy Meets World meets Casablanca meets Looney Tunes. By the end, Salem teleports to Los Angeles, ready to stir up more chaos in the next show. And we, the audience, are left grinning, because for all of its strangeness, this episode captures everything that made TGIF so fun in the first place. Familiar characters, and ridiculous setups, and a big beating heart underneath it all. Part 3. You Wish. Genie Without a Cause.
Cream cone.
He's not your master. The big book of genies says you're not supposed to be doing that.
Why not?
Because that's the rules.
I don't play by the rules.
Oh, you gotta play by the rules.
Why?
Because that's what the rules. There are rules about rules, you know.
I ain't gonna win this, am I?
No.
Next up on our time-traveling TGIF train, 1950s America via the short-lived sitcom You Wish. If you don't remember the show You Wish, don't worry, many people don't. It was a one-season wonder, perhaps wonder is generous, about a single mom whose family discovers a genie living in an old rug. You could think of it as a 90s attempt to revive I Dream of Jeannie vibes for TGIF, complete with the slapstick magic and be careful what you wish for lessons every week. By November of '97, You Wish was struggling in the ratings, but the Time Warp night gave it one big moment to shine. And oh boy, did it go full retro. The heart of it all is Mickey Apple crushing on a local hotshot greaser named Mitch. Little brother Travis is having none of it. He hops on his trusty 10-speed and pedals after them to, of course, make out point, because where else do 1950s feelings go to be dramatic? Meanwhile, Grandpa Max and Mom, Gillian, detour into a smoky jazz club to catch Jeannie's first real taste of live jazz. He gets very into it. Finger snapping his way through a poem called "You Drove Me to This, Grandpa Max." Grandpa's not amused and he storms the stage and basically says, "Cool it, Kerouac, your family needs you." With a blink and you missed it bit of magic, Jeannie zaps the trio straight to makeout point, just as Mitch goads Travis into a drag race to dead man's drop. Totally fair, if a Harley versus a 10-speed counts as fair. Somehow, the ever-scrappy Travis keeps pace, and in the rush, they even manage a little heart-to-heart. Mitch swears he really cares about Mickey. Then, ta-da, Salem appears right in the middle of the road. Mitch slams the brakes, and Travis doesn't. And whoops, off the cliff Travis goes. Don't worry, Jeannie's there with the clutch Jeannie on your shoulder save. And then that's when Sabrina finally pops in hunting Salem so she can put the clock back to the 90s. No such luck. Our favorite feline peels off with a lady biker on Mitch's stolen Harley. Sabrina then grabs Travis's bike and takes off after them, pedaling into the moonlit sky in a moment that's pure TGIF magic. An E.T. wink for anyone who grew up watching. Now, behind the scenes, Jeannie Without a Cause ended up being a swan song of sorts. Unbeknownst to viewers at the time, this was the final episode of You Wish to air as part of TGIF's lineup. ABC yanked the show off their schedule after this. Even the crossover boost wasn't enough to save its sagging ratings. In fact, the Time Warp night was the show's peak in viewership. Around 11.9 million tuned in, a noticeable jump, but one good night couldn't reverse the trend. You Wish was canceled the following week, with ABC slotting in Sabrina reruns to fill the gap. It eventually burned off a few unaired episodes the next summer, but for all intents and purposes, the Time Warp was this genie's last wish. Part 4. Teen Angel. One Dog Night.
It's quiet over here.
Vote for Proposition 12.
What's that?
Outlawing noisemakers.
What is all this for?
It's election day in heaven. Washington ran against Lincoln, but somehow Nixon won.
And finally, the Time Warp lands us in the most gloriously funky decade of all, the 1970s, on Teen Angel. Now, if you remember this one, it was already one of TGIF's strangest shows. A kid named Marty comes back from the afterlife as a guardian angel for his best friend, Steve. This show was always breaking the fourth wall, always making jokes about Heaven's HR department, and never met a bizarre plot that it didn't love. So basically, Teen Angel was made for this kind of stuff. The episode kicks off in 1997, business as usual, until Steve's little sister Katie strolls in holding a stray cat that just so happens to be Salem. Steve's mom, Judy, takes one look at the talking furball, remembering a childhood cat that looked just like Salem, and sighs, "I wish life could be like it was in the 70s again." And that's all the invitation that Salem needs. Poof! Next thing you know, bell bottoms, disco lights, and wood paneling are everywhere. The Stevensons are officially living their best Brady Bunch life. So everything's groovy until Judy offhandedly says she wishes that she could find a man as loyal as the family dog. Steve, being the helpful son that he is, nudges his angel buddy, "Hey Marty, do Mom a favor? Turn Boo into a man." What could go wrong, right? One quick heavenly snap later, Boo the dog becomes Bob Dogman, an oddly charming guy with a few canine habits. He chews on shoes, barks at passing cars, and just cannot resist the game of fetch with Katie. Still, he asks Judy for a night out at the disco, and she actually says yes. Marty soon then gets a divine reality check from Rod, God's cousin and part-time rule enforcer, who warns that any animal turned human will eventually change back. At exactly 11:43 p.m., to be precise. And just like that, Marty realizes he's set his best friend's mom up for the world's weirdest curfew problem. He and Steve decide to crash the date, desperately trying to keep Mom from noticing her date is literally growing his tail back. Meanwhile, amid the glitter balls and polyester, Sabrina Spellman materializes, still chasing down her runaway cat. She bumps into Marty, who's shocked that she can see him. Angels are supposed to be invisible to mortals. Sabrina casually shrugs, saying, "I'm a witch." Cue the cheesiest and kind of the best crossover joke of the night. Marty squints and says, "A witch? What's next? Genies and boys meeting worlds?" And Sabrina, with a perfect sitcom smirk, fires back, "You wish." The studio audience loves it. As the clock ticks closer to midnight, Bob Dogman's transformation starts slipping. First the tail, then the paws. Steve and Marty scramble to get him out of there before Judy realizes that her date's about to turn back into a canine. They manage to escort him out just fine, and moments later, poof, Boo's back to wagging and panting like nothing ever happened. This is when Sabrina finally corners Salem and reclaims the time ball, ready to put an end to this decade-hopping disaster. With a flick of her magic finger, she reverses the spell, zapping every TGIF universe back to the 1997 that they started at. And if you watched this live, you probably remember how it ended. A rapid-fire montage tying up every storyline. Sabrina and her aunts back in the 90s, Corey and Topanga safe in Philly, the Apples breathing easy that Genie's traded his black turtleneck for board shorts again, and the Teen Angel crew snapping back to present day, minus one mysterious dog from the disco days. And there you have it. The wild ride that was the 1997 TGIF Time Warp. A night when 4 sitcoms, 1 cat, and a whole lot of magic turned Friday night television into a time-traveling fever dream. It was weird, it was wonderful, and it was totally TGIF. The kind of television stunt that could only happen in the 90s. Hey, if you enjoyed this trip back through TV history, make sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more nostalgic deep dives, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on what's next. We love hearing about your memories as well. Did you watch the Time Warp live back in '97, or are you discovering it for the first time today? Drop your thoughts and your favorite TGIF moments down in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going.